When I returned home from our week-long honeymoon, strange noises greeted me as I walked through the door. Anxiety set in. I feared that the house might have been broken into while we were away. "Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone inside. Should we call the police?" I asked my husband, but he dismissed my concerns with a calm, "It's all right." He strode into the house, and I hurried after him, my heart racing. To my relief, it wasn't burglars but my mother-in-law Kelly and my sister-in-law Jo. They were inside, seemingly at ease. I was puzzled, wondering why they were there. Apparently, they had volunteered to look after the house while we were gone, and my husband had given them a key. I had assumed they would leave once we returned. "It's getting dark. If you don't go home soon, you'll be out of time," I suggested, hoping they'd take the hint. Instead of leaving, they settled in, commandeering the living room and even taking a shower without asking. I hoped they would depart the next morning, but when I came home from work, they were still there. Unable to tolerate the intrusion any longer, I asked my husband to ask them to leave. His response shocked me. "We all live together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave." He was suggesting that I move out instead. I packed a few essentials and left with just a carry-on. "My name is Izzy. I'm a 29-year-old magazine editor. 3 years ago, I met my current husband Alex, through a friend. Prior to him, I had little relationship experience, but I was drawn to his decisive and dependable nature. He expressed his love first and after 3 years of dating proposed. We married, and while searching for a new home and wedding venue, Alex's reliability made everything run smoothly. I enjoyed our life together in the new house. But my mother-in-law Kelly and sister-in-law Jo were a constant source of stress. My father-in-law had passed away a decade ago, leaving Alex's family as just Kelly and 27-year-old Jo. I had minimal contact with them before our marriage and hoped to maintain a polite distance. However, after the wedding, their presence became increasingly intrusive. Kelly began calling almost daily, demanding more money. "Can you increase my allowance? I can't live decently on what you give me. Just $200 more would be enough," she pleaded. I told her to ask Alex, as he was in charge of finances. She accused me of being extravagant and warned me that not taking care of my in-laws would bring bad karma. Despite my attempts to redirect her to Alex, she blamed me for her financial troubles. Kelly also insisted that I visit her more often, help with chores, and send her favorite foods monthly. While Kelly harangued me over the phone, Jo started showing up unannounced, adding to my stress. While I was cooking dinner, Kelly frequently dropped by unannounced, saying things like, "I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd pop in. Is dinner ready yet? I'm starving. Hurry up." She would make herself comfortable on the sofa, waiting for me to finish cooking, and then leave after eating. Despite my repeated requests for her to give me notice before visiting and to come less often, she always brushed off my concerns. "Don't worry about it, I'm just stopping by. Just feed me whatever," she'd say dismissively. I tried to address the issue with Alex, and he did speak to both Kelly and Jo about their behavior. Despite this, I didn't feel it was appropriate to be too harsh with them, given that Jo was Alex's sister. 6 months into our marriage, Alex and I finally went on our long-awaited honeymoon in Europe, which had been postponed due to our busy schedules. We enjoyed every moment, unwinding and escaping from daily stress. However, when we returned home after a smooth week-long trip, we were greeted by strange noises coming from inside the house. Panic set in as I wondered if we were dealing with a burglary. "Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone in the house. Shouldn't we call the police?" I asked Alex, but he didn't seem concerned at all. "It's all right," he said calmly, walking into the house as if nothing was wrong. I quickly followed Alex into the house and was relieved to find Kelly and Jo instead of burglars. However, I was puzzled about why they were there. "Oh, you're back. Did you bring me a souvenir? The bracelet I asked for? Did you get it?" Kelly asked, clearly expecting something. "Of course not, it was too expensive," she replied when I said I hadn't. While the three of them chatted away happily, I couldn't help but wonder about their presence. Why are you guys here? I asked. Kelly looked at me with a hint of annoyance. Are you saying our presence is a nuisance? An empty house is an easy target for burglars while you were on vacation. We went out of our way to protect it, so you should be grateful. Apparently, they had offered to watch the house while we were away, and Alex had given them the key. I had told Alex that he should have discussed this with me first. He replied that he hadn't had time because they had approached him at the last minute. What was done, so I tried to accept that the house was safe thanks to their efforts. As I looked around, however, I saw the extent of the mess they had left. Every room was cluttered with their belongings. Joe's clothes were crammed into the closet, with the overflow strewn across the floor. In the living room, clothes, bags, remote controls, comic books, and other items were scattered everywhere, not just on the table but also on the floor. After a long flight, I was exhausted and frustrated by the thought of cleaning up all this mess. That wasn't the only issue at hand. I had hoped that once we arrived home, Kelly and Joe would leave, but they didn't. It's going to be dark soon. If you don't go home now, you'll be stuck here, I said, trying to be polite. Why don't you let us take it easy today? Kelly responded. Not only did they refuse to leave, but they also took over the living room and started taking showers without asking. They had completely made themselves at home. Expected them to leave the next morning, but there was no sign of them moving out. When I came home from work, they were still there. I told them it was time for them to go. We're family. You don't have to worry about us. Just pretend we're not here, they insisted. Despite their insistence that I ignore their presence, I was the one who ended up cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry. I felt overwhelmed and frustrated. If I didn't take action, they seemed ready to stay as long as they wanted. I decided I needed to ask Alex to intervene and ask them to leave. As I was tidying up my room, I noticed that one of my limited edition perfumes, worth over $300 and no longer available for sale, was missing. I had been using it sparingly. Panic set in and I asked Kelly if she had seen it, but she claimed she didn't even know I had perfume. When I questioned Joe, she pulled out the bottle from her bag and handed it to me. To my dismay, it was nearly empty. I had been careful with my limited edition perfume, and there was still more than 6% left. When I confronted Joe about the missing perfume, she simply said, "It smells nice, doesn't it?" My friend liked it too, so I lent it to her. She'd offered no apology, and my frustration boiled over. Why did you use it without asking? What you're doing is theft. Didn't you learn that stealing from others is wrong? I demanded. Joe brushed off my anger. I only borrowed it for a moment. Why are you overreacting? If you're so concerned, just take back what's left. If you borrowed it, then give me back what you used, I'd insisted. Fine, but since it's already used, I'll only give you half the money, she retorted. I don't want the money, I want the perfume back, I said firmly. Joe rolled her eyes. You're so unreasonable over a bottle of perfume. I know the brand and it shouldn't be that expensive. She checked the price on her phone and was taken aback. Holy cow, why is it so expensive? Are you really going to spend $300 on perfume? If it's that important, maybe you should have mentioned it. Seeing her reaction, I felt even more disheartened. It's valuable to me, and I only used it inside the house. I never imagined I'd have a relative come into my room and use my things without permission. As we'd argued, Alex walked in. What's all this fuss about? Alex, she used my perfume and called me a thief, I said, leaving Joe in the living room while I explained everything to him in the bedroom. I'm at my limit. I need you to ask them to leave. Don't get so worked up over something minor, Alex replied dismissively. Also, I haven't mentioned that they're going to be living with us here. My jaw dropped at his unexpected announcement. My mom's house was old and falling apart, so she was considering repairs or moving. We have extra rooms and it's more cost-effective for her to stay here. We decided to live together. Why didn't you talk to me about this? Do you own the house alone? I'm paying the mortgage too. Don't blame me, my mom decided to sell her house on her own. I protested. Alex's response was blunt. We're living together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave. His decision, made without my input, and his suggestion that I leave left me feeling distant and hurt. I realized my feelings for him were fading. I understand, I said quietly. I started packing the essentials into my carry-on case. Alex didn't try to stop me but remarked that running away after a fight was immature before walking out of the bedroom. Kelly and Joe watched with smirks as I packed, and as soon as I left the house, they locked the door behind me. I had no intention of returning. I headed to a hotel and called my boss, with whom I regularly consulted, to request a few days off. During my time off, I searched for an apartment and informed my parents that I had separated from Alex, explaining the situation. They asked what my next steps were, and I told them I planned to get a divorce. In the meantime, Alex sent me a text. If you're sorry, you can come back. Mommy and Joe both say they'd forgive you. When I called him to discuss the divorce, he initially resisted, saying, "You're divorcing me over this. You just need to put up with it a little longer." Eventually, he recognized my determination and agreed to the divorce. From that point, everything progressed smoothly, and the divorce was finalized within 6 months. I wanted to end things as quickly as possible, so we swiftly divided our assets and I handed over the house to him. We had been married for less than a year and now we were divorced. My friends and coworkers were concerned and curious about what had happened. Initially, I shrugged off their questions, unable to share the details. But as I processed everything, I became more open about the situation. When I told them the full story, their reactions were unanimous. "That's impossible." I appreciated the sympathy from my friends and coworkers. It made me feel a bit better, knowing they were supportive of my situation. After moving out and living alone, I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. Instead of spending time on household chores, I took on 3 times as many projects as usual and even helped out colleagues who were overwhelmed. My boss noticed my dedication and expressed concern, but as I immersed myself in work, the memories of my difficult times resurfaced and I began to blame myself. Despite being grateful for the distraction work provided, Alex called me about 5 months after the divorce. I had left most of my belongings behind when I moved out, so I answered the phone thinking it might be about that. Alex started by asking what I was doing and if I was living alone. His approach seemed unusual because he was typically impatient with vague conversations. I didn't want to waste time, so I asked directly why he was calling. He said he wanted to get back together. I had no interest in rekindling the relationship, so I said no and attempted to end the call. But Alex quickly interjected. "Wait, there's something I haven't told you yet." "I'm busy, so make it quick," I replied. He continued, "Can you lend me some money? I'm struggling to pay the mortgage. It used to be a joint responsibility, so I understand it's hard to manage alone." I knew the amount Alex needed wasn't that significant, but he explained that he had been expecting a raise a few months ago that never materialized. He had also been informed that his performance wouldn't warrant any future increases. Faced with this, he decided to look for a new job, hoping for better conditions. Unfortunately, he only found a lower-paying position and had yet to secure a new role. Regardless of his situation, I wasn't willing to lend him any money. Told him not to contact me again. "You're still single, right? No one will want a middle-aged divorcee like you. You'd be better off reconciling with me," he said. I simply replied, "No, thank you," and ended the call. I couldn't understand why I had fallen for and married him. I was deeply disappointed in my own judgment. After that, Alex, Kelly, and Joe all began to harass me. Through our conversations, I learned that they believed Alex was earning a substantial income due to us buying a new house and having a lavish wedding. Since their allowance hadn't increased and Alex had refused to do so, they thought I was the one preventing it. They had been pleased to live comfortably after I left, but when they discovered Alex's salary was lower than expected, they panicked. They seemed to think that men were paid more than women, but my salary was actually higher than his. I wanted to block all of them on my phone, but Alex knew where I worked and could easily find me. I was anxious that Alex might call me at work or even show up at my office, so I answered his calls a few times. He consistently complained about Kelly and Joe spending too much money and running out of savings. They had started working part-time but couldn't make ends meet because they spent their earnings so quickly. It seemed like every conversation revolved around money. I hoped that if I told him I was in a similar financial situation, he might stop calling. I decided to use this approach the next time he reached out. That day, as usual, Alex called and said, "I need money. I don't have enough to pay the mortgage this month." I replied, "Actually, I'm planning to resign from my job soon. I've spent most of my savings, so I need some money from you. If you think I'm lying, you can check with someone at my work." Alex simply said, "I see," and ended the call. After that, he stopped contacting me. When I shared this with a friend, she informed me that Alex's situation was even worse than I had realized. He had ended up with a lower-paying job, and most of his salary went towards the mortgage. Additionally, Joe had an affair with her part-time job manager, who was married. When his wife discovered the affair, she fired Joe and filed a civil lawsuit against her. Initially, Joe claimed that the manager had pursued her and she didn't know he was married. However, text exchanges revealed she was aware of his wife's pregnancy and still pursued him. The manager and his wife divorced, and Joe faced a substantial compensation claim. Joe's affair and subsequent lawsuit led to her losing both her job and her friends. Alex's family ended up covering the mortgage and the debt from the lawsuit, effectively living in a cycle of debt. Kelly, meanwhile, complained that her friends had grandchildren while her own children were still single and struggling. Alex often lamented to this friend about his daily arguments with Kelly, his current single status, and how women no longer showed interest in him. He had lost weight and looked disheveled, aging far beyond his years. His friend rolled her eyes at his complaints. Had shared the reasons for my divorce with many people, and now this friend was the only one Alex had left to confide in. She was the one who introduced us and felt a sense of responsibility for how things turned out. Although she found his constant drama oddly intriguing, she stayed in touch with him to keep him away from me. As for me, I recently launched a web magazine with a university friend. I left my previous job and invested most of my savings into the startup. Though it's a small venture and I handle many tasks on my own, I am thrilled by the new challenges. Where I once felt daunted by new beginnings, I now manage them with confidence, having grown from past obstacles. I've also started a new relationship with someone I met at work. He respects my feelings and supports me, helping me realize that Alex was not a decisive leader but simply selfish. For a while after my divorce, I doubted that I would ever marry or date again. Now I am able to think positively and cherish the new happiness in my life.
It appears my husband has fallen under some devilish influence. I've made the decision to transfer ownership of this house to Susan. Should anyone oppose me, be prepared for the possibility of divorce. My husband intends to bestow our home, registered under my name, to the spouse of our eldest son, a true harpy who should vacate immediately. This conniving wife has manipulated my husband to her advantage, but I shall reclaim what's rightfully mine. I find it rather amusing, really. I can easily manage the monthly mortgage of $1,800 on my own. As it seems, even my eldest son has aligned with her. Well, I no longer hold any sentimental attachment to this decrepit abode. I shall relocate elsewhere. Rest assured, all three of you will face the consequences. Prepare yourselves. My name is Grace, and I am 60 years old. I hold an executive position in a prominent corporation. I reside with my husband, Robert, who is 2 years my junior. Just last year, we embarked on renovating our ancestral home in anticipation of our future. Built by my father, the house had aged considerably and required updates to accommodate our advancing years. However, due to our age and the extensive renovations, the loan amount is somewhat burdensome at $1,800 per month. However, The loan amount is well within our means, and I've been assured of its approval given my executive position in a major corporation. Interestingly, Robert, my husband, manages a small restaurant earning less than me, which seemingly facilitates my loan application process. Yet, solely relying on my income to repay the loan would pose challenges. Although the house originally belonged to your father and is now in your name, I can't help but feel guilty. Would you be able to cover the entire loan amount? In return, I'm more than willing to increase my contribution towards our living expenses. We jointly deliberated on the decision to renovate, and the transformation of our home is nothing short of remarkable. Its newfound beauty and comfort are almost surreal. Renovating the very house I grew up in brought me immense joy, fostering the hope of a lifetime within its walls. I never imagined the day would arrive when I have to bid farewell to this cherished home. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzes with a message. "I'm getting married," announces my eldest son, Jack, through the receiver. At 31, Jack holds a prestigious position as a section chief in a major corporation. He's always been diligent, immersing himself in studies and extracurricular activities, and his dedication has only deepened in adulthood. Despite his achievements, discussions of his romantic life have been scarce. Naturally, I found myself intrigued by the woman Jack intended to wed, a subject of much speculation. What manner of person could she be? If she has captured Jack's heart, she must possess remarkable qualities. Yet, a pang of concern gnaws at me. Could she be scheming, taking advantage of Jack's limited experience in matters of the heart? The anticipation and nerves swirled within me as we awaited the arrival of our son's significant other for the first time. Finally, the day arrived, and a poised woman with chestnut locks draped in a pristine white chiffon dress graced our doorstep. "I'm Susan, pleased to meet you." She greeted us with impeccable manners and a tidy appearance, leaving a favorable first impression. Flashing a brilliant smile, she extended her greetings to both Mom and Dad. Observing her, I couldn't help but feel reassured. Jack could surely be entrusted to her care. It seemed Robert shared my sentiments, his grin mirroring my own. "She's a keeper," he whispered in approval. Susan, catching his words, clasped Robert's hand and met his gaze earnestly. The intensity of the moment left me questioning her motives. What was she playing at? Taken aback by her sudden closeness, I instinctively recoiled, sensing Jack's own surprise, though Robert appeared unperturbed. While I harbored no feelings of jealousy, the encounter left an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. What are you doing?" I questioned, my tone tinged with uncertainty. "Thank you," Susan replied, her response doing little to ease my unease. Sensing Jack's discomfort, I directed my attention towards Susan, only for her to stammer apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have overstepped on our first meeting. I'm truly sorry," hastily releasing Robert's hand. I often hear that I lack awareness of personal space. It's never my intention to cause offense. I just end up doing it. I'm really sorry. Despite her sincere remorse, I couldn't help but feel taken aback by her behavior, a stark contrast to my initial positive impression. But Jack is absolutely smitten with her, even with her unconventional behavior. Robert interjected, his tone tinged with fondness. Susan's lack of personal space is actually one of her endearing qualities. She's the one who took the initiative with me despite my shyness around women. Thanks to her, I've been able to open up and envision a future together. Seeing Jack, who's usually quite introverted, transform like this, well, I trust him in your hands. Despite my initial reservations, I came to realize that Susan was indeed a kind-hearted person. With my approval granted, their wedding plans swiftly fell into place, culminating in a joyous ceremony just a few weeks later. From the depths of my heart, I wish them nothing but endless happiness. 6 months into their marriage, upon returning home one evening, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. A pair of women's shoes sat at the entrance, and in the living room, I found Susan. "Ah, welcome back, mother-in-law," she greeted me cheerfully amidst the scattered remnants of a drinking session. Puzzled by the scene, I couldn't help but inquire, "What's all this? Why the impromptu party without Jack?" Curiosity piqued, I sought an explanation. Well, on my way home from work, I ran into Susan. She expressed a desire to bond, so we opted for a drink. With payday still out of reach, we thought home was the best venue, Robert explained, his tone tinged with amusement. But why not include Jack in the festivities? and I wouldn't want to intrude on the newlyweds' privacy. They could have simply enjoyed a drink at their own place, I countered, tilting my head in confusion. It could have been fine at our place, but our home is a bit of a mess right now, Susan confessed, her words slightly slurred from the effects of the drinks. But why drink here together? Why not invite Jack? I pressed, puzzled by the unconventional gathering. Having a daughter-in-law visit her in-laws for drinks while they're newlyweds? It's a bit unusual, I remarked, scanning the room for any sign of Jack's presence. Jack's swamped with work, and I've been pulling overtime shifts. It's just so lonely, Susan's voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. There, Susan. It's not your fault, I comforted, reaching out to console her. Jack is the one to blame for leaving his newlywed wife alone. Robert consoles Susan, gently stroking her hair. Oh, daddy-in-law, I inwardly cringed at the peculiar sight. It was all rather unsettling. Robert, remember your position. Susan is your daughter-in-law. Showing such intimacy is disrespectful to Jack. I reprimanded him firmly, hoping to steer him back to propriety. However, before I could say more, Susan interjected, Please don't scold daddy-in-law. What? I couldn't help but express my bewilderment at her defense of Robert. Though I had much to say, the exhaustion from a long day at work left me devoid of energy. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up, I sighed, retreating to the bathroom to seek solace. Resolved to address the situation, I dialed Jack's number to explain the bizarre turn of events. He insists he'll leave work immediately to pick up Susan. Understandable. Susan may be a tad eccentric, but Jack's willingness to drop everything for her speaks volumes about their bond. Still, I can't shake the feeling that life with her post-marriage might be a tad challenging. Despite my uncertainties, I resolve to offer Jack some marital advice when he arrives. Lost in contemplation, time slips away as I soak in the tub. Feeling a bit woozy, I make my way to the living room, expecting to find Jack ready to escort Susan home. To my surprise, Jack, despite being the designated driver, is indulging in a drink. Jack, you drove here, right? You shouldn't be drinking, I gently remind him, only to be met with a cheerful, tipsy response. Susan wanted a drink, so I thought we'd make a night of it, Jack explains, his words tinged with joviality. While I'm relieved my son will be staying the night, the presence of the daughter-in-law who's left a less than stellar impression gives me pause. Suddenly, a sense of bewilderment washes over me. I stammer, genuinely puzzled. But before I can protest further, Jack, already well into his drinks, interjects, I could drive you guys home. I don't want Susan to overstay her welcome. Despite my fatigue, I offer to chauffeur them home. However, Jack, ever the gracious host, insists, No, I feel bad. Why don't you join us for a drink? I'm rendered speechless. Something feels amiss. Suddenly, Susan flashes a mischievous grin. It's as if she's mocking my confusion. It's just my imagination, right? I try to convince myself it's a misunderstanding. Little do I know, her elaborate scheme has already begun unfolding. The following day, Susan returned, her apologies pouring forth like a flood. I'm truly sorry, she insisted before promptly leaving. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, as if a tempest had finally passed. However, upon returning home that same evening, I found Susan once again present, with no sign of Jack in sight. A wave of despair crashed over me, though the circumstances differ from the previous day. I apologize for disturbing you once more, but I felt compelled to offer my apologies, Susan expressed, presenting me with a box of sweets. I got carried away. My mistake, Robert chimed in, his remorse palpable. While somewhat irksome, their display of contrition signaled a genuine effort to mend their ways. I forgive you. Thank you, I responded, sensing Susan's discomfort and appreciating their attempt at reconciliation. With that, Susan ceased her visits, sparing me further interaction. To be honest, I was relieved. I had no desire to engage with her any longer. Or so I thought, until one fateful day when Robert approached me with a solemn expression, signaling he had something important to discuss. As I pondered what it might entail and remained in the living room, Jack and Susan returned home. It's been a while, I greeted them, only to be met with silence. Perplexed, I wondered if they hadn't heard me. Suddenly, Robert's voice shattered the silence, declaring, I'm giving this house to Susan. If you object, we're getting a divorce. My mind reeled in disbelief. What was he saying? I couldn't comprehend his sudden proclamation. "Mother-in-law, please leave," Susan interjected, her words plunging me into chaos. "What? What does that mean?" I demanded, my thoughts spinning. "Hold on, why are you giving the house to Susan?" I pressed Robert for answers, but his response only deepened my confusion. "You've been bullying Susan all this time," he accused. "Bullying? That's absurd, utterly baseless," I protested, struggling to make sense of the accusations hurled my way. But no matter how vehemently I argued back, Robert wouldn't listen, so shut up. Susan's words hit me like a slap in the face, explaining why she had been in tears, unable to return home until now. Robert's shouting only intensified, while Susan's tears continued to flow. How had things spiraled to this point? Suddenly, Jack chimed in, his voice laden with disbelief. "I never imagined my mother would stoop to this. It's beyond messed up." The more I denied the accusations, the more enraged they became. Susan's tears seemed endless. "That's it. I'm divorcing you. Leave now. I'm staying here with them," Robert declared firmly. "Why should I give my house to Susan?" I demanded, incredulous. In response, he shot back, "Because Susan is deeply hurt. Ordinarily, we demand compensation, but I believe there's a better way. By taking away your prized possession and giving it to Susan, it'll inflict the appropriate amount of damage on you, don't you think? I didn't bully her. Why should I be the one suffering? Besides, Susan quit her job when she got married. There's no way she can afford an $1,800 loan," I argue. Robert's response comes swiftly. "Don't worry. We'll put the title in Jack's name. With his salary and his previous employer, we can make the change right away." Despite his assurances, I remained skeptical. Changing the title is no small feat, especially with the loan in place. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch. I doubt the bank will approve it, I counter. Robert, however, remains optimistic. "You work for a big corporation, and so does Jack. We should be fine. Besides, I have a friend who works at the bank where you have your loan. I'm sure we can talk to him, and everything will work out." It's baffling where their sudden confidence stemmed from. That's right, an $1,800 loan is a breeze. Lol. Jack, emboldened by Robert's assurances, now stands firm in his conviction that I must relinquish the house. Despite my repeated protests, insisting I hadn't bullied Susan and thus wouldn't give up the house, they remain unmoved. Every objection I raise only ignites another heated argument. "This is too much," I mutter, growing weary of the ordeal. Through her tears, Susan finally speaks up, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mother-in-law, for the sake of this child, please," she pleads, gently caressing her belly. My heart skips a beat as the weight of her words sinks in. "No way, Mom. Susan is pregnant," Jack interjects, dropping the bombshell. Given her fragile state, the stress might lead to a miscarriage. "So please, reconsider," he urges. Stress during pregnancy is indeed a serious concern, but surrendering my home over baseless accusations seems unfathomable. I'm left feeling bewildered and conflicted. "Please just leave me alone for a moment," I murmur, retreating to the bedroom, seeking solace from the chaos unfolding. Doubts gnaw at my mind as I ponder Susan's accusations. Have I unknowingly treated her poorly? I wonder aloud, sinking into the bed, consumed by worry. Then a sudden discovery jolts me from my thoughts. "What's this?" I gasped, spotting a strand of brown hair on the bedspread. Robert's and my hair are both jet black. There's no plausible explanation for a stray brown strand. Could this revelation hint at infidelity, adding another layer to our already tumultuous situation? My mind reels at the possibility, teetering on the edge of despair. I don't even know what's real anymore. I whisper, tears streaming down my face as I succumb to exhaustion, drifting into a fitful sleep. When I awaken, the room is cloaked in darkness, signaling that night has fallen. As I attempt to make my way back to the living room, voices drift through the air, indicating that Jack and Susan have yet to return home. I wish I could join in for a drink. Robert's voice rings out, brimming with enthusiasm. "You can't, remember? You're pregnant," Susan reminds him, her tone equally fervent. Faced with their fervor, I find myself unable to intervene, resigned to the silent turmoil raging within me. Susan's cryptic accusations had left me in a state of despair, unable to bring myself to face the unfolding drama in the living room. Suddenly, the hushed tones of an intimate conversation pierced the silence. "Oh, Susan, I love you," Robert's voice murmured affectionately, followed by Susan's hesitant response, "Stop it, Robert. What if Jack or my mother-in-law finds out?" My heart raced with confusion and disbelief. What on earth are Robert and Susan doing? I muttered to myself, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before me. "Don't worry, Jack is passed out drunk, and Grace hasn't emerged from her room in ages. She's probably fast asleep by now," Robert reassured Susan, his tone laced with amusement. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. So they've been planning this all along, I realized, a surge of nausea rising within me. They kicked me out of my own bed to have their tryst with Susan, hidden from Jack. My home, a mere venue for their illicit affair, I concluded bitterly, feeling utterly betrayed. Fine, I'll let go of this wretched place. But mark my words, there will be consequences. The following morning, I feigned sleep in my room, pretending as though nothing had transpired. Truthfully, I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping in that bed any longer, and the shock of the previous night had rendered sleep elusive. Finally summoning the courage to relinquish the house, I declared, "I've decided to hand over the house." The reaction was immediate. A collective grin spread across their faces. "Fantastic, let's initiate the transfer of ownership right away," Robert exclaimed eagerly. "I'm sure I can secure a loan approval in no time," Jack chimed in, his excitement palpable. It pained me to see him so oblivious, but I refrained from speaking the truth to a son who seemed wholly under his wife's sway. "Not yet," I interjected, delaying the proceedings. In the days that followed, divorce procedures and the transfer of ownership consumed our time and energy. It was a grueling process, but we persevered, ultimately succeeding in changing the ownership. "From today onward, it's no longer your house," Robert proclaimed triumphantly. "Get out of here, old lady, lol." Susan's spiteful whisper sent a surge of anger coursing through me. "I'll leave, you don't have to tell me," I retorted, masking the hurt beneath a veneer of indifference. Surrendering the house I had called home for a lifetime was undeniably sorrowful, but it had morphed into a den of betrayal. Yet, I harbored no regrets. From now on, I'll turn the tables on these three in their twisted dynamic. They'll rue the day they crossed me, I vowed silently. Nearly a month after vacating the premises, I felt ready to execute my plan. Returning to my former home, I hesitated only briefly before ringing the doorbell. "What does a stranger want here?" Robert's voice, tinged with anger, greeted me even after all this time. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss," I stated assertively, unwilling to be dismissed so easily. "Why should I let you in my house?" Robert hesitated, clearly reluctant to entertain my request. "It's for Susan's sake, too. I have something important to share," I insisted, hoping to pique his curiosity enough to grant me entry. The mere mention of her name was enough to sway Robert, allowing me entry without hesitation. Though I felt a wave of disgust at the thought of invoking her name, I knew Robert's weakness for her, so I played that card. "An outsider is here," Robert announced, a term that stung, considering our former marital status. His choice of words irked me, but I pushed aside my irritation, focusing on the task at hand. "What do you want after all this time?" he demanded, the tension palpable in the room. "I want you to look at this," I replied, laying out the photos before them. "What? What is this?" Robert's voice betrayed his confusion as he studied the images before him. "These are," he began, his words trailing off as he recognized the figures in the photos, himself and Susan, captured on what appeared to be a date. In truth, since our divorce. I had enlisted the help of a private investigator to track their movements, resulting in these incriminating snapshots. "Just a moment. What are you trying to insinuate with these photos?" Robert's tone turned defensive, attempting to downplay the significance of the evidence before him. "We're simply a close father-in-law and daughter-in-law, nothing more, nothing less," he asserted, his words ringing hollow in the face of the damning evidence. "Yeah, why are you resorting to such underhanded tactics? What do you hope to achieve by presenting these nonsensical photos?" Susan chimed in, her tone laced with disdain. Despite their protests of innocence, I remained unconvinced. "Well, how about this?" I announced, retrieving my smartphone and playing a recorded conversation. "I really do love Susan. Hey, if you speak so loudly, Jack and mother-in-law will wake up." Robert's voice echoed through the room, followed by Susan's murmurs. "What? What's this?" Robert's voice trembled with disbelief as he listened to the recording. "Actually, the day I discovered your relationship, I had recorded your conversation," I explained calmly, though my heart raced with anger. "No, this is a misunderstanding," Robert protested desperately, his words falling on deaf ears. "What misunderstanding? This is clearly not acceptable," Jack interjected, his fury palpable. She kept her head down. I added, deciding to stoke the flames further. "Listen, I hate to ask, but who's really the father of that baby in your belly?" I pressed, watching as Jack's complexion turned ashen. "Is it with a dad?" Jack's voice quivered with fear. "No way, my father-in-law was pulling out every time." Oh, Susan's words trailed off, a realization dawning upon her too late. "You just admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it." Robert and Jack erupted into shouts, their anger boiling over. In the chaos that ensued, they ended up wrestling with each other, their scuffle abruptly interrupted by Susan's cry of pain as a cramp seized her stomach. "I've been saying this all along, haven't I? I haven't been bullying Susan. Could it be that you were lying just to drive me away, to manipulate Jack?" I interjected, my voice laced with frustration. Jack recoiled in disbelief. "You're kidding. What the hell? That's just messed up with you guys," he exclaimed, his trust shattered. Unable to trust even my own mother, I watched as Jack grappled with the betrayal, his sense of guilt palpable. "Now that you understand all this, spill everything," he demanded angrily, his gaze fixed on the two culprits. Reluctantly, they confessed, revealing, "We have enough evidence. Here, are we going to court?" The mere mention of the word court seemed to loosen their tongues, and they began to speak. Apparently, Susan initially loved Jack, but upon seeing our newly renovated and beautiful home during their marriage proposal, she grew envious. "My parents' house was pretty run down, and I was jealous of a beautiful house like this," she confessed bitterly. "The interior was quite nice too," she explained tearfully. It became evident that the woman who coveted a home like ours had meticulously orchestrated her plan to win over Robert on the day of the marriage proposal. So she intentionally ambushed Robert after his work without inviting Jack and brought him home. For several months, as Jack remained absent, she cultivated a relationship with Robert and plotted to push me out. "Then why not propose to live together from the beginning?" I questioned. She paused before replying, "I have a negative perception of mothers-in-law. At home, my mom and grandma fought every day because my grandma bullied my mom. I didn't want to subject myself to living with a mother-in-law. The only way to live comfortably in a beautiful house was to get rid of the mother-in-law. Indeed, with such a perception, living with a mother-in-law would be undesirable. But to pursue your father-in-law? What did Robert think about this?" I pressed further. I knew I was being manipulated, but when she greeted me with a smile, held my hand, Robert's admission trailed off, revealing his vulnerability. Despite being aware of being used, he seemed to have succumbed to her charm, choosing to abandon me to keep her by his side. "You guys, you're the worst." Jack's words hung heavily in the air as the two offenders hung their heads, tears streaming down their faces. Following Jack's natural decision to divorce, he opted to verify the child's DNA, revealing Robert as the biological father. "I won't pay child support," Jack declared, demanding compensation from the guilty parties. "Of course, me too. I can't believe I'm suing my own father for compensation." I consoled Jack, gently patting his head as he grappled with the shocking revelation. That deceitful woman had upended all our lives, but she would soon come to regret her actions more than any of us. My intuition proved correct. 2 years later, she remarried Robert, choosing to endure their union for the sake of their child. Placing their offspring in daycare, she resumed work. "Look, Daddy, Uncle came to pick you up today," she chirped to their child, unaware of the disapproving glances from other mothers at the daycare. The children seemed to be adjusting well, but she's struggling to connect with other moms, feeling isolated. When she attempted to explain her divorce and remarriage to her own parents, their fury was directed at Robert, leading to their estrangement. It's all a consequence of her choices. As for the house, Jack now resides there alone. I contemplated selling it, but couldn't bear to part with it, considering it's been Mom's home since birth, a repository of cherished memories. Despite my insistence that the house felt eerie after everything that happened, Jack couldn't bring himself to sell it due to overwhelming guilt. Perhaps influenced by my constant aversion to the house, Jack arranged for it to be professionally cleaned and cleared out of all remnants of Robert and Susan. Despite his efforts, Jack felt remorseful, acknowledging the pain he caused Mom. Even though it was because of that woman, I did something terrible to Mom. I know you probably won't forgive me, but please visit me or come to the house on a whim, and let me show you some devotion, he pleaded, offering me a ticket for a hot springs trip. Though I'm not ready to forgive him just yet, Jack's remorse has touched me. I'm considering taking steps to rebuild our parent-child relationship to what it once was.
Meet Jody, a 29-year-old who's been working from home for 3 years. Before this setup, she held a consulting position at a major corporation, overseeing online operations. The decision to transition to remote work came unexpectedly when she found out she was pregnant. Opting for freelancing, she bid farewell to her corporate role, embracing the flexibility it offered. With her knack for marketing, she's been successfully managing various projects and directing online operations, bringing in a decent income. However, her husband, Huey, remains somewhat oblivious to the nature and value of her work, seeing it merely as a pastime. The shift to working remotely granted Jody the luxury of time, allowing her to experience a serene pregnancy and safely deliver their daughter, Caddy. Initially, Jody stayed with her parents for support during the first month after Caddy's birth. However, Huey's insistence on her return prompted her to shorten her stay to just a month. Since then, she's been navigating the delicate balance between work and childcare, managing adequately but not without its challenges. Unexpectedly, Olivia, her mother-in-law, proposed the idea of living together. Despite initial reservations about the potential complexities, Jody agreed on the condition of building a duplex to maintain some level of autonomy. The construction proceeded smoothly, and soon they moved into the new home, sharing common spaces. While initially pleased with the arrangement, Jody's contentment soon turned to frustration as Olivia began to impose various household tasks on her, often disrupting her work. Olivia's demands grew incessant, leaving Jody little room to focus on her professional responsibilities. Even when Jody voiced her concerns to Q, she found little support, with him dismissing her grievances and insisting she comply with his mother's requests. This lack of understanding and support from her husband only added to Jody's stress, pushing her mental and physical well-being to its limits. "I'm working hard and you're just playing. That's pathetic." With every complaint I voiced, Huey's attacks escalated, dismissing my efforts as nothing more than play. Even when I insisted that I was seriously working, he refused to believe me. Cody, my father-in-law, seemed to echo Huey and Olivia's sentiments, viewing working from home as little more than a hobby. Their lack of trust in my work left me questioning my own worth, fearing abandonment due to my perceived inadequacy. Then one day, when Hugh was off work and everyone was home, I had Caddy lying next to me as I worked. Huey barged into the room with a loud noise, demanding I come to my parents-in-law's room immediately. Ignoring Caddy's cries and leaving her behind, he must have known she was there. Was the loud noise really necessary? Doubting the sensibility of Hugh and my parents-in-law, who interrupted my work, I picked up the crying Caddy and went downstairs. Entering the living room, I found the parents-in-law and Huey chatting happily. Perhaps I had reached my limit of irritation. Anger started to bubble up inside me. "What is it?" I asked quietly, sitting down with Caddy in my arms. The parents-in-law and Huey continued whispering to each other, their secretive behavior unsettling. Patiently, I waited for them to start the conversation. Then Olivia coughed exaggeratedly and glared at me with surprising words. "You leave this house," she said abruptly. I was confused by Olivia's statement. Did she mean for me to temporarily return to my parents' house? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Olivia snorted and crossed her arms arrogantly. Even as I looked to Hugh for an explanation, he only smiled continuously. Was he mad, or was it me who was losing it? Why, I wondered. I needed to understand the reason calmly, so I first turned to Olivia and asked her why she said that. Olivia's eyes lit up as if she was glad I asked, and with a smile similar to Hughie's, She began to rant about how inadequate I was. Every day you neglect housework, let Caddy cry incessantly, and just play with your computer and mobile phone. I don't know if you're relying on Huey's salary, but you never listen to advice. Just like a parasite, Olivia continued, laughing heartily as if she found it amusing. I apologize for the housework, but I'm doing the basics. I also take good care of Caddy. She's quite a quiet child. I countered Olivia's accusations as much as possible. I can't just let go of my computer and mobile phone. I'm working. Isn't that understandable? Then Huey glared at me. Are you cheating or what? He accused, and I stared back at him, bewildered by his baseless accusation. Yes, Jody is cheating. Olivia joined Huey, pointing at me with a look of disgust. I was appalled at their audacity. I'm not cheating. I can show you my mobile phone right now, I said, taking out my phone to prove my innocence. But Huey just scoffed at it. Anyone can deceive with that. Can't trust you, he said dismissively. Realizing arguing was pointless, I put away my phone for now. We don't need someone like you. Parasites should move out immediately. Olivia continued to berate me. Move out quickly, she continued. I started to feel like maybe leaving with my daughter was the only option. However, there was one reason I couldn't decide to leave just yet: the duplex house. I was the one who paid for it, went to the construction company repeatedly, and was particular about the interior and exterior. Therefore, I couldn't just easily say, yes, sure, and leave this place. Moreover, the mortgage is still in my name, and I doubt Huey's salary alone could cover our living expenses. If I leave, my income goes too. Are you sure he can manage? I gave them one last chance to reconsider, but Huey scoffed. What income of yours? Don't make me laugh. We've been living off my salary alone until now. His ignorance made me feel almost sorry for him. I sighed deeply and turned to Olivia. Hugh is quite a handful, even more than a 6-month-old daughter. Will you be taking care of him? Huey is high maintenance. He needs his towel, underwear, and pajamas ready after his bath, his shoes polished daily, his shirts ironed, suits deodorized, and wrinkle-free. If his morning coffee strength is slightly off, he loses his temper like a madman. I doubted Olivia could handle such a needy Huey. I asked, offering Olivia a chance. I can do a better job than you. Who's just been playing around? She scoffed. Besides, if you leave, Huey already has someone else in mind. Olivia, looking pleased, said something that she shouldn't have to hear. What do you mean? I didn't miss a beat and turned my gaze to Hugh and Olivia. Olivia showed a look of regret and hastily averted her eyes. Hugh glared at Olivia. Why did you say that? He whispered in a low voice. Explain what's going on. From their reactions, I gathered that Huey might have another woman. I glared intensely at Huey, prompting him to speak uncomfortably. Apparently, according to Huey, for several months, he's been seeing a woman named Carol, a young lady in her early 20s who fell for Huey at first sight during a business encounter. After her advances, they started dating. Carol is beautiful, graceful, and has a wonderful personality, Hugh says with a laugh. I couldn't believe it considering Huey's looks. I couldn't fathom why such a young woman would be interested in him. Half believing, I asked Hugh for proof, thinking if it's true, I'd secure compensation. Hugh showed me his WhatsApp history with Carol, and as expected, the messages were mostly from Huey, suggesting dates and compliments. However, Carol seemed disinterested in anything beyond work, politely declining personal interactions. Moreover, she typically responded formally, with no stamps or anything, just simple replies. Stunned by Huey's smug face, I was at a loss for words. I took screenshots of the conversation, transferred them to my phone without permission, and saved them. You never know when they might serve as evidence. Then I'll leave. With all that had transpired, my affection for Hugh had cooled off entirely, and I didn't care what happened to them anymore. I'll take Caddy with me, I declared as Huey and the parents-in-law seemed pleased with my decision to leave. Huey's face turned serious, and his raised hands fell. What are you talking about? You can't raise Caddy without any income. That's right, Leave Caddy here. Don't be silly, Hugh. And the parents-in-law didn't understand why I needed to take her with me. As far as I'm concerned, I don't understand why I should leave my daughter in such a place. I've told you I have an income, and why would I leave her with people who can't even take proper care of her? When Caddy grows up, she'll work hard, and I'll relax. Hugh interrupted with his nonsensical talk as I was explaining why I wouldn't leave Caddy. My anger was building. He kept spouting selfish things, not realizing he's digging his own grave. He even plans to use our daughter as a tool. Very well then, let's decide the custody through court. Please prepare a lawyer. Until then, I'll take care of her. But I knew that arguing here would only complicate things further with Huey and the parents-in-law, with unwavering confidence that I wouldn't lose. Once they agreed to legal proceedings, I wasted no time in preparing to leave immediately. Over the next few days, I never left my daughter's side, making all the necessary arrangements. I visited the construction company that had helped build the house and explained everything. I asked if they knew any good real estate agents to sell the house. Nick, the president of the construction company, became my ally, assuring me they'd handle everything. They quickly arranged for the sale, and to my surprise, due to the house's recent construction, pristine condition, an excellent location, it sold for far more than I expected. Simultaneously, they found an apartment for my daughter and me, a great place at the lowest price due to my budget considerations. I expressed my gratitude and began preparing to move immediately. "Oh, have you already found a place?" While packing my dishes in the living room, Olivia asked with a laugh. "Yes." I responded briefly, feeling no need to elaborate. "It'll be lonely without you," she said with a big laugh as she walked away. As unpleasant as she was, I looked around. The sofa and dining table I had bought were too large for the apartment, so I decided to sell them. Next was the refrigerator, which I also bought. It was slightly large, but I decided to take it with me and marked it with a sticker. I put stickers on all the furniture and appliances I had bought and wanted to take, and took photos of the items I didn't need with my mobile phone. On moving day, I purposely chose a day when the parents-in-law and Huey were away. Huey was at work, and the parents-in-law were called away to a community gathering. With the divorce papers Huey had given me in hand, I worked with the movers to transport my belongings. I had the construction company arrange for a waste removal service to pick up the unwanted furniture and other items. I steadily progressed with the move, and everything was finished within 2 hours. A few hours later, I left the house with Caddy. As I arranged things in the apartment, the phone rang. It was Olivia. It was already 5 in the evening. I had left before noon, so she must have just realized. I answered the call. "Jody, what's this about the house being empty?" Over the phone, Olivia seemed quite flustered, yelling loudly. "Ah, those things were mine. I disposed of the ones I didn't need. What are you talking about?" I replied calmly. "Well, I bought them. I have receipts and other proofs of purchase, so there's no point in complaining," I said with a laugh, leaving Olivia seemingly at a loss for words, raised in nonsensical uproar. "Oh, and I sold the house, so please vacate within a month," I added cheerfully. Olivia sounded even more astonished. "Why would you do that? Since I built the house, it's in my name and I've been paying the mortgage, so I decided to do as I pleased. So that's that," I stated firmly, and Olivia was still trying to say something, but I hung up the phone. After that, I received numerous calls from the parents-in-law and Huey, but I ignored them all. I needed to arrange the apartment quickly for Caddy's sake and had no time for distractions. I also consulted with a lawyer, and we agreed all future communications would go through them. Months later, after repeated negotiations, I easily won custody of Caddy. The reasons were simple. I had ample financial resources. I had been the one caring for Caddy all along, and working from home allowed me to spend more time with her. Huey, who had assumed he would naturally win custody, was shocked and bitterly spat. "I don't need such a girl anyway," before storming off. Relieved that I could finally live peacefully with my daughter, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. After I left, the parents-in-law and Huey hadn't left yet. What should I do? I received a call from the president of the construction company. I simply replied, "Please evict them," and the president, knowing the situation and seemingly amused, laughed heartily and said, "Leave it to me," before hanging up. I don't know exactly how the formidable-looking president persuaded Hugh and the parents-in-law to leave, but I can't imagine. A few days later, I received a report that they've moved out, and I was impressed by the efficiency. Even that brought relief to my heart. But several months after the divorce, Hugh contacted me. By then, the divorce was final, and the parents-in-law had somewhat given up, so I hadn't blocked his number. But I immediately regretted not changing my mobile phone number or maintaining the block. "Ah, long time. I was just thinking maybe you were starting to miss me by now," he said. What is he talking about? I felt more liberated than ever after the divorce, not having to care for him. I listened as Huey continued speaking. He was apparently dumped by Carol and had thought I was his only option. The way he was dumped was laughable. He went to Carol right after our divorce, saying, "We can be together right away." When he told her, "You don't flatter yourself," she responded very coldly, misinterpreting her professional demeanor at the workplace. Hugh visited her at home, resulting in a restraining order from the police. Hugh claimed, "Carol betrayed me. I dumped that woman." But frankly, I had no interest in his story. I hung up the phone while he was still talking and immediately blocked him. I blocked all messages and later changed my phone number, starting anew. I heard from mutual friends that after the incident with Carol, Huey had disputes with clients and was negatively affected at work. Perhaps feeling too uncomfortable, he resigned. Unable to secure another job, he seemed to be struggling financially, constantly asking various people for loans. The parents-in-law are probably taking care of him, but I imagine his modest income is hardly sufficient for a stable life. As for me, I'm living a fulfilling life with Caddy, dedicating my presence solely to her, which brings me the utmost happiness.
What I buy becomes my husband's property too. If that's unacceptable, then maybe we should just divorce. Charles, my husband, often tries to take things from me for reasons that seem completely unreasonable. He even attempts to give gifts I bought for my parents to his own parents, just to make himself look good. But that's not how it works. When I confronted him about it, his face turned pale. Before I married Charles, my grandparents had left me a significant gift, a piece of real estate. I thanked them, thinking this would be a future safety net for both me and my husband. But my grandparents, who were always wise and cautious, advised me to keep it a secret, even from Charles. They insisted that I keep the knowledge of my passive income and financial independence to myself. I felt the pang of guilt about hiding this from Charles, but I chose to follow my grandparents' advice. After my grandfather, who cared deeply for me, passed away, I continued my life with Charles. That's when the incident occurred. One day, while checking the account where I managed our living expenses, I noticed that $10,000 had been withdrawn. This account, which I primarily managed, was meant to cover our household costs, using the money Charles contributed. It was a huge sum, and I had no memory of withdrawing it, which meant it had to be Charles. When he came home that evening, I confronted him. "Hey, $10,000 is missing from our living expenses account. Do you know anything about that?" "Yeah, I lent it to my mom. She was in some kind of trouble," he replied casually, confirming that he had indeed given the money to his mother, Lisa. "And you didn't think to tell me?" I asked, astonished. "It's fine. Besides, it's my money that I earned. We have some savings, so it's not a big deal. That amount won't hurt us," he said, brushing it off. If Lisa was in trouble, what could I do? I had to help. But yeah, I probably should have said something. The account was for both of us, and if he had taken the money from a separate account he had before we got married, it would have been fine. But taking such a large sum from our shared account without a word, that was too much. When I cited his selfishness, Charles frowned, clearly irritated. Okay, I'll tell you next time," he muttered, dismissing the issue and quickly heading to the bathroom. I felt a knot in my stomach. He hadn't always been this way. When we first got married, he was attentive and always listened to me. Was this how marriage changed people? A few days later, I had no choice but to visit my in-laws' house to drop off a package that had been mistakenly delivered to us. "Oh, Megan, thanks for bringing this over. Why don't you come in for a bit?" Lisa said, greeting me warmly. I hadn't planned on staying, but it felt rude to refuse, so I stepped inside for a cup of tea. As I sat in the living room, I noticed some new, luxurious items, high-end cosmetics, glamorous clothes, and various health products. "Oh, my wonderful son gave them to me as a gift," Lisa said with pride. I realized then that the $10,000 in our account had been used for these extravagances. Charles had told me Lisa was in need of money, but it seemed she had used it on indulgent purchases instead. I couldn't help but feel uneasy knowing that the money had been spent on luxurious products for my mother-in-law. As I sipped my tea, unable to muster a smile, I noticed the shift in my in-laws' demeanor. Their cheerful expressions faded, replaced by a stern, almost threatening look. "My son is such a wonderful boy, always thinking of me and getting me these lovely gifts. But what about you?" my mother-in-law asked pointedly. "Yes, as his wife, are you treating my son the way he deserves?" my father-in-law added, his tone laced with suspicion. There was something unsettling in their voices. "We heard that you give him a hard time about the money he spends on me," my mother-in-law continued. "That doesn't seem right, does it?" It became clear to me then. Charles had painted himself as the victim to his parents, making it seem like I was the unreasonable one for questioning his decision. Their fearful, accusing gazes now made perfect sense. I felt a deep weariness settle over me. I had never imagined being treated so poorly by both my husband and his parents. The constant neglect and lack of respect were taking their toll, and for the first time, I began to seriously consider divorce. I thought that if I divorced Charles, I would return to my parents' house and use my savings from passive income to rebuild their home. The house, a two-story structure built over 30 years ago before my brother was born, had become too spacious and difficult for my parents to manage as they aged. With just the two of them living there now, even the handrails we'd installed for their convenience weren't enough to make it comfortable. A cozy, one-story house would be far more suitable for them. So I immediately called my parents to discuss my plans. Surprisingly, they weren't shocked at all about the potential divorce. Instead, they were thrilled about the idea of rebuilding their home. "We're so happy you're thinking of this," my mother said, her voice bright over the phone. "Even if we won't be living there for long, it's wonderful knowing it's being done with your income, and you can take over the house afterward." "Thank you," my father added. "But remember, take it easy and don't overdo it." Their encouraging words lifted my spirits, and I set about planning the rebuild. I was waiting to hear back from the construction company when Charles suddenly confronted me. "How dare you use our savings to build a house without telling me anything about it?" he shouted as soon as we sat down in the living room. He banged his fists on the table, his face contorted in anger, completely disregarding my feelings. "My parents will live in the new house," I replied, trying to stay calm. "No, that's not happening. It was built with our joint property, so my parents have just as much right to live there," he insisted, his voice growing louder. "Are you seriously planning to cram 4 people into that little one-story house?" "Shut up and just give me the house," Charles screamed, slamming his fists on the table again. I realized that if he knew about my passive income, his rage would only intensify. But at that moment, I decided it was time to tell him the whole truth. "To tell you the truth," I said, steadying my voice, "I have passive income. I've actually been saving money from the real estate my grandparents gifted me," I explained. "The house is being paid for with that passive income, so I didn't take a penny from our joint funds." Guilt tugged at me for breaking my promise to keep this secret. But Charles's reaction confirmed my grandparents' wisdom. His shoulders tensed, and he began pounding the table even harder. "What kind of wife hides the fact that she has her own income?" he yelled, his face turning red with anger. "You play around with my money while protecting your own, keeping it a secret from me." Watching him lose control, I realized why my grandparents had warned me to keep this hidden. Maybe they had already seen through Charles, knowing what kind of man he truly was. "I'll take the house as alimony," he snarled. "The house you built as my wife is mine too. I'm the head of this family, and if you disobey me, I'll divorce you." His words filled me with nothing but dismay. How had I lived with this man for so long without realizing his true nature? Initially, I had planned to use my passive income as a safety net, something to rely on if we ever face financial hardship due to illness or job loss. I intended to reveal it when the time was right to help sustain our life together. But now, any desire to share that money with him had vanished. Be my guest, I said coldly as I rose from my seat and walked out of the house, leaving Charles and his demands behind. I couldn't stand being near Charles, but decided to stay at a business hotel for the night to cool off. I planned to return home the next day with a clearer mind. However, when I walked in the following morning, Charles was waiting for me, a smug, unpleasant grin plastered across his face. As I entered, he approached me, holding a sheet of paper behind his back. With a smirk, he revealed it. It was divorce papers, already filled out. "You're lying about that passive income, aren't you?" he accused. "You made it up to cover the fact that you were actually taking money from our joint account." His accusations were as baseless as ever, and I found it impossible to reason with him. I had been honest with him from the start, and now I saw no point in trying to convince him further. "I'm telling the truth. I do have passive income," I reiterated. "Here you go again," Charles sneered. "I know you can't live without me." He shoved the divorce papers into my hand, still smirking. "Let me know when we can move in," he said with a dismissive wave, as if it were all a game. "I'm going out for a drink." He patted me on the shoulder and walked out, humming cheerfully, completely oblivious to the turmoil he'd caused. In that moment, I saw Charles for who he truly was. He hadn't changed. He had simply hidden his true nature from me all this time. From the beginning, he had looked down on me, never once truly considering my feelings. Without hesitation, I packed my belongings, filled out the divorce papers right then and there, and left the house for good. I decided to move in with my parents temporarily, explaining everything to them. We agreed to stay together until the new house was completed. The next day, I knew my life was finally moving in the right direction. I felt a wave of dismay as I looked at my phone and saw that my call log was filled with missed calls from Charles. Then, as if on cue, my phone rang again. It was him. Reluctantly, I answered, hoping this would be our final conversation. "Hello." "Hey," he said, his voice laced with impatience. "All your stuff is gone, you know." His tone left me puzzled. He was the one who had initiated the divorce, so why was he suddenly panicking when I simply left? "Yes, we're getting a divorce, so that's normal," I replied calmly. "I won't be coming back, so feel free to use the empty space however you like." There was a brief silence on his end, as if my words were finally sinking in. It seemed he was beginning to grasp the reality of my situation and the fact that I truly had passive income. After a long pause, he spoke again, but this time in a tone so sweet and pleading that it caught me off guard. Hey, he began hesitantly. "Could you let my parents live in the new house? I don't care if I have to live with your parents too, please?" I was stunned. "I've already told you it's a small, one-story house," I reminded him. "Please," he persisted. "I said I'd surprise my parents with a house." His words left me speechless. How could he even think of giving away a house he didn't own, and to present it as a surprise? It was beyond reckless and utterly absurd. "You don't really care about the savings, do you?" he added, his voice almost pleading. "You have no idea how much I was worrying about the money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Charles was still trying to manipulate me, thinking only of himself and his parents without any regard for the truth or the consequences of his actions. "I gave you an allowance, saved for our living expenses, and tried my best to make ends meet," I began, my voice steady. "But that has nothing to do with what's happening here. You're careless with money and you leave all the hard work to others while pretending to have everything under control. You plan to present the house to your parents as if you prepared it all by yourself, didn't you? When in reality, I did all of this for my parents." Charles suddenly fell silent, and my frustration only deepened. It was infuriating how he tried to take credit for something he had no part in, using my hard work and intentions to impress his own parents. He was trying to take advantage of my genuine feelings and seize what wasn't his. "I won't give you the house I built with all my heart and soul for my parents just so you can show off to yours," I declared, rejecting his plan once and for all. He began to rant even louder. "But husbands and wives are supposed to help each other," he protested. "I'll tell them you built it, please. We're not a married couple anymore, are we?" I replied firmly. "We're strangers now. I already filed for divorce." The shock in his voice was evident. "You? Already filed it? Why are you so surprised? You're the one who asked for the divorce." "I didn't think you would actually leave me," he stammered. "Hey, let's start over. Let's talk it out and try to be a good couple this time." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the man who had spent our savings on his own mother, threatened me with divorce, and belittled me until the very end. There was no way I would ever consider getting back together with someone like him. "No, thank you," I said, my decision unwavering. "Please give my regards to your parents." And with that, I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of finality and relief. I ended the call with a bright, resolute click. The following day, my phone was flooded with voicemails and messages from Charles, pleading for reconciliation. He claimed we could still start over, that he loved me, but I was certain his true motive was to access my property and fortune. To sever all ties, I promptly blocked all his contact information, including that of his parents. In the meantime, the house was completed, and my parents and I settled into our new, comfortable home. Life felt rejuvenated. Later, I ran into a mutual friend who knew Charles and shared the news of our divorce. She offered her sympathy and filled me in on recent developments concerning my ex. Charles had abruptly resigned from his job, claiming he no longer needed to work hard because he had acquired real estate. The company was unable to reach him, but he attempted to retract his resignation the next day. His bosses were furious, lecturing him about the trouble his sudden disappearance and incomplete notice had caused. They were particularly incensed that he hadn't considered the impact on his colleagues. Charles tried to fabricate an explanation for his actions, but it quickly became apparent that his divorce and reliance on my income were the real reasons behind his behavior. His lies unraveled, and the company refused to rehire him. It was ironic that Charles, who had once dismissed my passive income as a lie, was now trying to exploit it while parading his ill-gotten gifts to his parents. He never thought about me or our future. Reflecting on this, I felt nothing but relief. I heard that Charles had moved back in with his parents, but they were reportedly harsh with him. He struggled to find a new job due to the circumstances of his departure from his last one. It seemed he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. As for me, I'm thriving. Living in the house I built for my parents, pursuing the job I've always wanted, and enjoying life, my passive income now supports those who genuinely care for me. I feel at peace and content with how things have turned out. Hey Judy, what's wrong? It was a cold day with Christmas carols echoing through the city. I paused to admire a tree ornament that had caught my eye. My husband, his breath visible in the chilly air, turned his head to look at me from a few steps ahead. He smiled softly, his ears flushed from the cold. I adored the way he looked at me. "Nothing. Let's head home and have dinner. I've made a hot stew for this particularly cold day." "Sounds great." Laughing, we held hands and strolled down the street. A familiar Christmas tune drifted into my ears. "I'm Judy," I began, "and what I'm about to tell you is a rather strange Christmas miracle I experienced a few years ago, and the story leading up to it." "You're late." Before I could respond, I flinched at the sharp edge in my husband Dan's voice. "Where have you been?" "I just went to the closest deli," I replied, trying to stay calm. It was mid-December, and it felt like snow was imminent. I'd been chased out of the cold without my coat a short time ago. "Are you trying to fool me? I'm the breadwinner of this household. When I come home, I expect dinner to be ready and served. Can't you even manage that?" He glared at me displeased as he looked at the dinner. "No hot sauce. How can you eat chicken wings without it? Don't mess with me." His harsh scolding made me rush out of the apartment with just my wallet and return with the hot sauce. As I gasped for breath, he grew even more irritated. "Delhi? Are you crazy? Isn't it cheaper to buy at a supermarket?" He pointed at the hot sauce, rolling his eyes. "You have no sense of budgeting." I couldn't help but retort, "Of course, I buy groceries at the supermarket, but it's far away. I told you earlier, it slipped my mind today. Anyway, you get upset if the food gets cold. That's why I went to the closest shop. I did forget to add it to my shopping list, but I was sure the chicken wings would taste fine even without it." I didn't understand why he was so angry. His frustration seemed unrelenting. "Where's your apology?" "I did apologize earlier, didn't I? What's with your attitude?" My retort only fueled his anger further. He continued to yell for another hour. Who wants such stale food now? In the end, he flipped the plate of chicken wings and stormed out to get dinner elsewhere. A few days later, while cleaning my parents' house, which was up for sale, I visited an old lady in the neighborhood whom I called Grandma. "Listen, Grandma," I said, "your prediction was off this time. I didn't predict anything, Grandma, who had cared for me since I was a child, replied with a chuckle. You're going too far. No way. Everything you predicted since I was a kid came true. If they weren't predictions, then they were prophecies, I said with a wry smile. Remember when you told me not to go to the mall? There was a lightning strike that nearly burned it down. Another time, when I planned to relax at home, you advised me to go out because it would be sunny. Reluctantly, I went out and found my house had been robbed. If I had stayed home, I would have had to confront the robber. I shivered at the memory. The robber was later caught with a knife, and the thought of what might have happened if I'd been home made me cringe. Despite her dismissive attitude, Grandma listened as I spoke with seriousness. I don't think I would have been prepared for my mom's illness if he hadn't told me, especially since she was my only family. My mom always said that you gave her peace of mind. You had told her that I would be blessed with something wonderful on a Christmas not far away. It brought her comfort to know that I would have a bright future before she left me. She shared this with me from her hospital bed. It was a ray of hope for her, and seeing her contented was a testament to her love for me. So when Dan proposed to me on Christmas Day, I thought it was just as you had predicted. I met him through a mutual friend. At first, he seemed like a humble and gentle guy. But once we got married, his true colors showed. He became an arrogant husband. Like the hot sauce incident, he got upset over trivial matters. He complained that the food was too cold and the salad was lukewarm, even though he had ignored the food for a long time, playing on his phone. It wasn't just about food. He criticized nearly everything I did. How I cleaned the apartment, washed the clothes. Nothing seemed to please him. It made me feel trapped and suffocated. I didn't want to go back home to him. I went to Grandma, feeling a sting in my nose as I spoke. Now, it's almost sunset. Don't you need to go back and cook dinner? Grandma said, urging me with a glance at the sky. Feeling softly rejected, I stood up slowly. You're going to be okay as long as you stand your ground, she assured me. Even though you'll face struggles, you will find happiness one day. You'll have a Christmas that will make you jump for joy. So just live honestly and stay true to yourself. God is watching. Her words softened my heavy heart. I turned around, contemplating her reassurance. Is it a prophecy? I asked. Let's see. I'm just an old woman, she replied with another ambiguous smile, leaving me puzzled. Maybe if I put in more effort, it might change. I decided it might be too early to judge her original prediction. But as I went about preparing dinner, ironing my shirt, and dealing with Dan's hostility, things only worsened. It had been less than a year since we married, and already he took it for granted to order me around. He was constantly grumpy and overbearing, never offering a kind word. One night, he stormed in, his anger palpable. Who do you think you are? He snapped. Why did you leave me waiting outside? I have to microwave my food now. God damn it, your laziness is infuriating. I sighed in frustration. I had a co-op meeting tonight. I'd even left a note on the table for you. Shut up. That's no excuse for lazy cooking, he yelled. What do you mean you didn't cut corners? I prepared the main course and sides as usual, but to him, if it wasn't freshly cooked, it was considered cutting corners. His logic was skewed and his demands were unreasonable. You should always come before anyone and anything, he insisted. I've been telling you, you're my wife and you must obey me. His incomprehensible demands left me stunned. He stood on his dignity, proclaiming, you have no family or relatives and can't live on your own. A scum like you should just shut up and worship me. If you can't, I'll divorce you. His smirk seemed to reveal that he was merely relieving his stress by making me submit. Anyway, give me a foot massage. I tried my best to restrain myself from snapping back. I knew that would only make him angrier. Besides, I had nowhere to go in the midst of the sleet at night. So reluctantly, I sat on the floor and began the massage. My life continued in this oppressive pattern until one day, while grocery shopping, I suddenly fainted from excruciating pain and had to be rushed to the hospital by ambulance. As the doctor explained my condition, I felt my mind go blank. This virus is transmitted through sexual intercourse, he said. I had your husband tested as well. Both of you are infected. You didn't realize it because there were no symptoms. He continued, unfortunately, you'll need surgery, and I'm very sorry to say this, but the chance of conceiving in the future seems extremely unlikely. Dan quickly followed the doctor, and I was left grappling with the devastating news. I couldn't have a baby. As I repeated the doctor's words to myself, my mind was slowly overtaken by darkness. Desperate for more information, I tried to follow the doctor and Dan with my unsteady legs. "Wait, doctor, Dan," I called out, but I froze when I overheard their conversation. "So, everyone out there needs to get tested?" Dan asked. "Exactly. They must be treated all at once, otherwise, it's pointless because it keeps coming back," the doctor replied. "Would they know what the test is for?" "Of course," Dan said persistently. I listened in despair as the conversation unfolded. It turned out Dan had been seeing at least 3 girlfriends and was still involved with one of them. I looked at a picture of my mom in the empty room, whispering to it, "I needed help, you know. Even though he's not a good husband now, he might change once we have a baby." I held on to Grandma's words like a charm. I would struggle, but eventually I would find happiness. I clung to the hope that things would get better. I had been wrong. Dan seemed to care only about his own health. He was meticulous about his condition and visited the hospital regularly, but he showed no concern for me. Having lost my parents, I yearned deeply for a family of my own, a husband, children, and a home filled with love. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched a picture of my mom in my hands. "Mom," I sobbed, my voice breaking as I tried to stifle my cries. Suddenly, Dan burst into the room, his anger palpable. "What are you doing wasting your time? You haven't even prepared dinner," he snapped. He threw the divorce papers down onto my head as I sat there, stunned. "Here are the divorce papers. This is your punishment for neglecting your duties and disobeying me." His voice was harsh and his demeanor was deranged. "You're so irritatingly depressing. I'm ready to divorce you at any time. It's no problem for me, but you're the one who will be in trouble. Instead of slacking off to your duty if you don't want a divorce." "I'm not slacking off," I protested, but he was already cutting me off. "Oh, and there's one more punishment," he said with a smirk. "I'm not giving you living expenses this month. Consider this a chance for you to reflect and change your attitude. Know your place. If you disobey me, it'll be divorce." After he finished, he left the room, looking strangely refreshed. The word divorce echoed in my mind as I stared at his signature on the papers. I took a deep breath, wiping away my tears from the picture frame. "Mom, I've decided," I said quietly, resolve hardening within me. I spoke softly to the picture of my smiling mother, asking her to watch over me. Then, I kept quiet and carried on with my life. For a while, Dan continued to treat me like a servant, venting his anger on me regularly. I argued back occasionally, but mostly I endured in silence. One day, as Dan began his usual tantrum, complaining about the lukewarm salad and cold stew, I sighed inwardly and resolved to follow through with my plan. "You remember the deal, right? If I don't obey, it's divorce," I said. "Right, you remember that at least," he sneered. "If you don't want me to leave, reflect on your stupidity." He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You're a bit weak upstairs, aren't you?" "What?" I replied, astonished. "Did you just say that?" He blinked in surprise at my response. "What did you just say?" Repeatedly saying divorce doesn't mean you're making a valid point, I said, unimpressed. "Your lack of vocabulary is quite sad." "What the heck? Let's just get a divorce," I said calmly. "I'm perfectly fine with it. I'll be a stranger to you, just as you wish." "Are you serious?" he stammered, his mouth agape. I smiled and delivered my farewell, watching as his anger faded into confusion. I had already moved all my belongings out. "If there's anything you don't need, just throw it away. Goodbye." I removed the apron I had bought when we got married, folding it neatly and placing it on the counter with the house keys on top. I gave him one last look and walked out of the house with my suitcase. "What the heck is going on?" His voice trailed after me, snapping him out of his daze. I ignored him, a sense of freedom washing over me. Yay, I'm free, I thought, heading towards my parents' house where I planned to live again. A year had passed since the divorce was finalized, yet Dan continued to contact me. His messages were relentless, pleading for apologies and offering to take me back. I had turned off notifications and ignored his non-stop texts, which were a new experience for me, given how little communication I had during our marriage. I decided to have one last face-to-face meeting with Dan at his parents' house. "Why have you been ignoring me?" Dan asked, trying to maintain a calm demeanor in front of his parents. "I've been texting you, but you never replied." "Oh, I turned off notifications from you," I said coolly. "Why? Was it really that annoying?" "Yes, it was." Dan's face flushed with anger. "So, what do you want to talk about?" I responded with deliberate annoyance, watching as his frustration grew. What's with the attitude in front of my parents? What are you trying to prove? Dan's voice rose, but he quickly reined it in, glancing nervously at his parents. I'm sorry, he muttered, a rarity for him, especially during our marriage. I stifled a smile, surprised he knew how to apologize. I kept my tone steady and moved the conversation along. What exactly do you want to discuss with your ex-wife? You divorced me, remember? Dan looked puzzled, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. Hold on, why are you acting so calm? Aren't you struggling after the divorce? How are you managing? He spoke as if he genuinely cared, yet he had never bothered to check on me, even though he knew where I was. If you want to get back together, I'm open to it, he said, his voice carrying a hint of hope. Doesn't that make you happy? Not at all, I replied, barely containing a laugh at his misplaced confidence. It doesn't make me happy, nor does it help me in any way. I'm doing well on my own. Your contribution of $500 a month wasn't enough to cover our needs. You're the one struggling without me. The expenses I used to cover are gone, and I'm much more comfortable being alone now. I shook my head, dismissing the idea. I don't see the point in getting back together after enjoying my newfound freedom. I feigned confusion as Dan's frustration became evident. What are you talking about? I was supposed to be a housewife, right? But why are we discussing finances? Dan shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsettled by the presence of his parents. Listen, Dan, stop acting like a child caught in the act. There's no need to put on a show for them. They know all about your secrets. Secrets? What are you talking about? Dan asked, his curiosity piqued. I signaled him to be quiet and prepared to reveal the truth. You're mistaken if you think I was just a housewife. Remember, I lived abroad because of my late father's work. I used the German. I learned to translate documents at home. The bookshelves were filled with materials and manuscripts, which I used to hide recording equipment. Wait, recording? Dan was stunned. His father presented the evidence, showing all the recordings of Dan's mistreatment. The videos laid bare his behavior, and Dan's parents were visibly distressed, apologizing to me and expressing their shame for raising him. Dan, caught off guard, looked like he might bolt, but his mother grabbed him and made him sit down again. She signaled to me, and I responded by pulling out the divorce papers. I pointed out the sections marked with red circles. You recognize these, don't you? No way, Dan stammered, clearly in shock. The red circles highlighted the witness signatures, names of people he knew well. Actually, there wasn't enough space for all the names. You've had more than 2 girlfriends, right? No more waiting, I continued. Before I could explain further, a resentful voice cut in. You never mentioned an STD. This means you brought it from somewhere else. Didn't you promise we'd get married? That's something only a bachelor would say. The argument escalated. You're not just a villain to us, but to all women. You're the #1 public enemy. You're finished. Surrounded by his former girlfriends, Dan crumbled to the floor as his parents looked on with exaggerated sighs. I had hired a private detective to investigate his girlfriends and had secretly contacted them. I also informed my ex-in-laws about everything. The result was chaos. Your game is up now, I declared. We're demanding compensation for the distress you caused. Dan worked for a company owned by a relative of his mother, so his payments were deducted from his salary to prevent him from escaping his obligations. Under strict supervision, he faced a long period of compensation payments. 6 years have passed since then. I was walking down the street on a cold day, Christmas songs playing everywhere, when a tree ornament caught my eye. My husband, his breath visible in the chill, looked back at me with a soft smile, his ears red from the cold. Our little girl, cheeks rosy, was nestled in his arms. I couldn't help but think about how Grandma's prediction came true. My current husband is surprisingly the brother of one of Dan's former girlfriends. After meeting him by chance and connecting over our shared experiences, he has been a source of comfort and joy. If not for what happened with Dan, I might never have met my current husband. Grandma's words about struggling but finding happiness have proven true. After we married, I found out I was pregnant, despite being told it was unlikely. I remember when I was rushed to the emergency room on Christmas Day and the doctor confirmed the pregnancy. My husband and I were overjoyed, jumping up and down, while the nurse tried to calm us down. It was a true Christmas miracle. As I snapped back to the present, my daughter clung to me in her fuzzy coat. Let's go home and have dinner. I prepared hot stew for this cold day. Sounds great. Yay, she cheered. Laughing, we held hands and walked home, the familiar Christmas song drifting in from somewhere nearby. "You already had the divorce papers ready? How's that? I scared you, didn't I? Because I'm ready for this at any time. So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, my husband Lance got up and went into his room. My name is Alice, a 28-year-old office worker. I married Lance a year ago after meeting him on a blind date. He pursued me, and after a year and a half of dating, we decided to tie the knot. In hindsight, it may have been too soon, but I had always vaguely envisioned getting married and starting a family by the time I was 30, so I accepted his proposal. But I quickly realized that I should have been more cautious about such life-changing decisions. The first red flag came when Lance abruptly announced he was changing jobs right after we got married. "I'm changing jobs," he said, completely out of the blue. "Why so suddenly?" I asked, trying to understand his reasoning. "Because I can't show my full potential there," he replied confidently. I was taken aback, wondering what he meant. He informed me that he had already submitted his resignation and would be leaving his job at the end of the month. Although he was able to secure a new position, the salary was significantly lower than what he had been earning before. At the time, I thought it would be okay since I was also working, but then came the next surprise. Lance started pressuring me to quit my job. If Lance's new salary had been sufficient to cover our living expenses, I might have considered it, but with his recent job change and reduced income, quitting my job would have left us in a precarious financial situation. Despite Lance's assurances that his salary would soon increase, there was no clear timeline for when that would happen. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to save any money, and we'd struggle to cover basic expenses like rent and car maintenance. So I told Lance, "I won't quit my job until your salary goes up." Lance seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit, bringing it up repeatedly. Each time, I gave him the same response. A year into our marriage, his salary still hadn't increased, yet he continued to ask, "When are you going to quit?" I was tempted to sarcastically say, "Now," but I couldn't, not yet. If he wanted me to quit so badly, he needed to focus on earning more. Instead, he should concentrate on his work rather than persistently pressuring me. I began to wonder why Lance was so eager for me to quit my job, and eventually, I realized it. Lance wanted me to take care of his mother, Sarah. Whenever we visited my in-laws, Lance would say, "I just want to make things easier for you, Mom," and Sarah would respond, "Thank you, Lance. That's very kind of you." Lance would then glance at me, silently pressuring me to quit my job. He claimed his mother needed care, but the truth was Sarah wasn't ill at all. She was healthy, active, and financially independent, earning enough from her part-time job to enjoy her hobbies and social life. She didn't need my help at all. If I were Sarah, I'd be insulted by the notion that I needed to be taken care of when I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But Lance still insists that I should take care of his mother, Sarah. "Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," Lance blurts out, clearly expecting me to be that person. It's tiresome to keep hearing this, but I finally ask, "Sarah is in perfect health. What exactly do you want me to do?" "There's plenty you could do," Lance responds, almost as if it's obvious. "You could help with the housework, run errands for her. There's always something that needs doing." But Sarah has a part-time job and spends a lot of time socializing with her friends. She's not even home most of the day, I point out. "Even if Mom's not home, you could still do the housework, couldn't you?" he counters. What? Is he serious? "So, you want me to be her housekeeper?" It's becoming increasingly clear that Lance just wants to look good in front of his parents, to appear like the dutiful son. If he cares so much about taking care of them, he should be the one doing the housework. I have no patience for Lance's superficial pride. Naturally, I didn't quit my job, and I certainly didn't start visiting my in-laws daily. I only went over during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Lance has always been like this when we visit his parents. He would order me around, telling me to clean up, help Mom, or see if there's anything we need from the store. But I never took the initiative to do these things. When I pushed back, saying, "Don't you know this area better than I do? You should go to the store," he would always reply, "It doesn't count if I do it." What does that even mean? I'm starting to realize that it's not about caring for his parents at all. Lance just wants to boss me around to make himself feel good by appearing like the ideal son. Is he really more concerned with looking good than with actually caring about me? That's how I'm beginning to see him. when I boldly asked him, "Why don't you try helping out or quit your job to take care of your own mother?" Lance looked visibly uncomfortable, his face twisting in disgust. "That's not something I'm supposed to do," he retorted. "I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will see you as a considerate and useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I am to you." So, in other words, he wants to dump all the inconvenient responsibilities on me while pretending he's doing something extraordinary. Well, I'm not your servant, your slave, or anything else. I certainly don't deserve to be belittled or treated like this in front of my in-laws. If Lance keeps making these unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll push back. But Lance remained the same, never changing his stance. He kept asking, "When are you going to quit your job?" And every time we visited his parents, he would order me around just like before. I had reached the end of my patience, so I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with my husband. "What do you mean, talk?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "I think we need to talk about our future," I replied. "Huh? What are you even trying to say?" he scoffed. "I'm honestly fed up, Lance. I'm fed up with you constantly asking me when I'm going to quit my job and pressuring me to take care of your mother." "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to take care of your husband's parents," he shot back as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Don't you think that's a huge burden on me? Isn't it your responsibility as her biological child to help with the housework and care for your own parents?" I asked, trying to make him see reason. "No way," Lance snapped. "It's the wife's duty to do that. Are you really the kind of person who doesn't care about her family? I'm disappointed you'd even say such a thing." "Then let me ask you this," I countered. "How have you been taking care of my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Lance looked at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents?" "So that means you haven't been and won't take care of my parents?" I asked, feeling my frustration growing. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are completely different," he replied, as if that explained everything. "What difference does it make? I don't understand," I said, exasperated. "I can't believe you're this clueless," Lance sneered. "It's like I'm talking to my old boss or something." "What are you trying to say?" I pressed. "I'm saying the husband's parents should always come first. The wife's parents should be your responsibility," he declared, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What they?" So, in Lance's mind, the only family that matters is the one he's biologically related to. "I'm so disgusted by you," I snapped. "I'm not going to your parents' house anymore." "Huh? Why would you do that?" Lance asked, clearly taken aback. "Enough is enough. I'm tired of this," I retorted, my frustration boiling over. "No way. How dare you talk back like that?" Lance shot back, his voice rising. "My mom was right." "What do you mean, your mom was right?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She said you're a badly behaved wife," Lance sneered. "That's why she gave me this." With that, he pulled a piece of paper out of his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had the divorce papers ready?" I asked, shocked. Lance looked disturbingly proud of himself. "How's that? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this at any time," he said smugly. "So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, Lance got up and went into his room, leaving me standing there in disbelief. No way. Why is Lance so selfish? And that triumphant look on his face, it's as if he thinks these divorce papers are some kind of weapon to make me submit to his will. The fact that Sarah had prepared the divorce papers made everything even clearer. Lance is nothing more than a mama's boy, eager to do whatever Sarah says while trying to boss me around. You've got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm letting Lance control me like this. Does he not realize that by pulling a stunt like this, he's already ended our marriage? His complete lack of common sense only makes me more determined. Lance had already filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me with the witness section signed by Sarah and his friends. It was obvious he was just waiting for me to fall in line. But instead, the next day, after Lance left for work, I filled out the rest of the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. Just to be safe, I'd also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate, ensuring that there would be no way to reverse this decision. I called my parents to explain the situation because I knew Lance, who had given me the divorce papers as a threat, might try to file the marriage certificate on his own if he found out I had already submitted the divorce papers. My parents were shocked that I had gone through with the divorce so quickly, but were even more outraged by Lance's behavior. They immediately offered to help me move my belongings. I took a paid leave and had my parents come over while Lance was at work. Together, we moved everything out to my parents' house. I decided to stay with them for a while, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of comfort and peace. Looking back, Lance never did any housework. I was the one cooking dinner after a full day at work, cleaning, and doing laundry on my days off. On top of all that, he expected me to take care of his parents, which was simply unreasonable. That night, my phone rang. It was Lance, who must have just returned home. "Hello?" "Hey, where are you right now?" Lance demanded. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied calmly. "What? Why the hell would you go back to your parents' house without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying there overnight." He sounded panicked. I almost laughed. How could he not realize I had taken most of my belongings with me? The fact that he thought I was just staying overnight spoke volumes about his selfishness. "I moved out," I stated firmly. "I'm not coming back." "Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food," Lance demanded, his voice rising in frustration. "You can prepare it yourself," I said, and without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. I knew I couldn't have a rational conversation with Lance about the divorce if he was going to be like this, so I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to me. A week later, Lance finally lost his patience and showed up at my parents' house. But he didn't come alone. He brought his parents with him. All three of them looked grim as they entered the living room. We sat facing each other, 3 against 3. "How could you do this?" Lance started, his voice laced with indignation. "I can't believe you would leave for such a long time without my permission." "That's because you were treating me like your personal housekeeper," I replied calmly. "All I asked was for you to take care of my family." Lance shot back as his parents, especially Sarah, glared at me. "Don't twist things to suit your convenience," I countered. "You've been forcing me to handle everything you don't want to deal with." "I've told you over and over, that's not what I meant," Lance insisted, but his words rang hollow. Sarah jumped in, her voice sharp. "What kind of wife are you? Lance has done so much for you." My father, who had been sitting quietly, began to tremble with anger. Sensing that he might lose his temper, I spoke up before things could escalate. "Lance told me to quit my job and take care of Sarah. He said it was my duty as his wife," I explained. "But when it comes to my family, he pushes all the responsibility onto me alone. In the end, Lance just wants me to obey him, take care of his parents, and let him take credit for it. He even told me that his parents were more important than mine, and that they should always be the priority." I could see the surprise on my father-in-law Robert's face. He looked at Lance, clearly taken aback. It was evident that Robert hadn't heard any of this before. "And to top it off," I continued, "Lance suddenly pulled out divorce papers, claiming it was Sarah's idea." "What?" Robert turned to Sarah, his tone questioning. "Did you really suggest that to Lance?" Sarah hesitated, flustered. "Well, it's just that Alice has been so difficult." "And did you really say that Alice's parents aren't a priority?" Robert pressed. Lance stammered, Well, it's just normal for your own parents to come first, right?" "Don't be ridiculous," Robert snapped. "I came here because I thought you were facing unreasonable hardships, but from what I'm hearing, you're the one at fault. Don't be a coward and try to use your parents' influence to get your way." Lance shrank under his father's rebuke. Robert had said everything I had wanted to say to Lance and more. He then turned to me and my parents, offering a sincere apology. "I'm sorry, Alice," he said, his voice full of regret. "And to you both as well," he added, nodding to my parents. "I am truly sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused you," Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. "I will give him a strict lecture." "Robert, you're not at fault here," I replied gently. "Please don't blame yourself, and thank you for your kind words." I took a deep breath. "But there's one more thing I need to say." Lance, sensing something serious, asked, "What do you mean?" "The divorce papers you gave me," I began. "I've already filed them. We're no longer married." "What? No. Lance and Sarah both turned pale, shock washing over their faces. "How could you do that without my permission?" Lance sputtered. "You told me I could file them whenever I wanted," I reminded him, my voice steady. "You even had Sarah sign the witness section for you." Lance stammered, "But That was just to scare you. Robert's face darkened with anger as he turned to his son. So you used it to threaten her? I spoke up, echoing Robert's frustration. Exactly. He thought he could intimidate me. How could you be so foolish? Robert snapped, his patience finally snapping. He struck Lance on the cheek, causing Sarah to gasp in shock. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Robert said, turning back to me, his voice filled with remorse. You were right to divorce this idiot. I apologize on Lance's behalf for ruining your marriage. Robert then grabbed Lance by the collar and demanded, you and Sarah better apologize too. They both muttered apologies before Robert led them out of the house. I felt a wave of relief. Robert had saved my parents from losing their temper, and later he ensured that all of Lance's property went to me in exchange for no alimony. Lance didn't dare defy his father, so I ended up with all our savings and other assets from the marriage. Though I had a higher income and was the one managing the household, Robert's intervention ensured that the division was fair, and I couldn't thank him enough. I later heard that Robert was so disgusted with Sarah's involvement that he divorced her as well. Recently, I ran into a former colleague of Lance's who told me that Lance wasn't good at his job and was constantly reprimanded by his boss. Apparently, Lance had quit out of spite and switched jobs. I hadn't known about this, and it only reinforced my belief that Lance had blamed everyone else for his own shortcomings. He wasn't making much money at his new job, so I'm grateful I left him when I did. I've since rented a cozy one-bedroom apartment and have been living comfortably on my own. Work is going well, and I even got a raise recently. I'm not interested in relationships right now. I'm focused on my career and personal growth. Looking back, it was clear that Lance was more concerned with appearances than with actually improving himself. He could only maintain his dignity at home, but not in the real world. There are so many men like him who think divorce papers can be used as a threat, believing they hold all the power. But that's a huge mistake. I hope anyone in a similar situation finds the strength to break free, just like I did. And I hope Alice finds someone wonderful in the future. Thank you for reading until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and see you in the next video. Are you done packing yet? Please make it quick. We plan to remodel your rooms once you move out, my oldest son's wife, Sarah, said impatiently, not even offering to help us pack. She seemed thrilled to claim this house as their own. Little did she know. Glancing at my husband, John silenced me with a look and turned a serene smile to Sarah. We're sorry for keeping you waiting. We'll leave by tomorrow with the movers coming in. It'd be best if you two stayed in your rooms. We were leaving behind the furniture and appliances we shared with Sarah and David. Besides our stuff from the bedroom and wardrobe, we didn't have much left to pack. We'd probably take less than half an hour to move out. The following day, our farewell was surprisingly dry. Well, we're off. Take care, we said. No apologies, no words of gratitude. They didn't see us off either. Sarah and David simply glanced at us from their leisure in the living room. Since they were so indifferent, we didn't need to make a fuss about leaving. But as we got into the cab silently, I couldn't help but worry about our cat. We were leaving her with them. Could Sarah properly care for her? Would she raise her with affection? I dialed a number on my phone as our house receded from view through the cab's window. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense that ticked off then. I'm Patricia, 64. I've been married to John, who's a year older than me, for 35 years. We've never had a major fight, and I would say we're pretty close. John worked for a foreign company and was often busy, but he always spent his spare time with the family. With his recent retirement, I was excited to spend more time with him, but it seems like I was the only one happy about his retirement. Our eldest son's wife was upset about it, and it was apparent. David and Sarah had been living with us in our house for a year now since their marriage. Sarah, David's wife, was actually the one who suggested we live together. We have a subway station nearby, and with a well-developed public transportation system in our area, commuting to work and going for shopping is pretty easy, which is why Sarah loved our place. My husband John and I had initially been reluctant, considering they were newlyweds, but we eventually gave in, leading to our current situation. Not even in our wildest dreams did we think things would turn out this way. What on earth are you thinking? That was one day about 2 months after John retired from his company. Just as I had returned from shopping, I heard John's booming voice and froze in the living room. John was scolding our eldest son David, who was sitting on the couch. It was unusual to find John this angry since he's usually calm and gentle. "What's going on?" With a heavy sigh, John turned to me. "David was rummaging through my bag and stealing money from my wallet." "What?" "Apparently, he lost big on a trifecta bet at the Kentucky Derby and is strapped for cash." With that, John snatched a few dollar bills and his wallet from David's hand. It was indeed John's wallet. I was sure of it because I had given it to him as a gift on our 20th wedding anniversary. The fact that David was holding the wallet and money was undeniable proof that what John said was true. "David, didn't you quit wagering on horses? You lost big before and swore you'd never do it again. So why?" Whether he heard me or not, David just continued to watch TV without responding. Ever since he was a child, he would often ignore us when we lectured him or talked about something that didn't interest him. There were times that he didn't remember the things I've told him verbally. This time was no different, and it seemed my pleas had no effect. However, even without an answer from David, I had a hunch about why he had started betting on horse racing again. Oh, it must be Sarah. David never cared about horse racing to begin with. He would never stoop so low as to take money from someone else's wallet, and he had never committed any crime like shoplifting. If I asked what caused such a drastic change in David, who was a hard-working office worker, I would answer without a doubt. It was meeting Sarah. Sarah is a bright and active woman. When we were first introduced to her, I hoped she would help bring David, who was introverted, out of his shell. But back then, I never knew about her hobby, that she was a huge fan of horse racing, and that her sense of spending is completely off-kilter. "You heard your mother talking, so why don't you at least say something?" said my frustrated husband as he turned off the TV. At that, David finally opened his mouth. "Shut up. I've paid you back, so stop nagging me. Besides, what's got you so worked up about a couple of $100 bills?" "What?" I was actually surprised at how light your wallet was. "You've really gone downhill, haven't you, Dad?" "Well, I'm retired, so what did you expect?" "How lame." With that, David left the living room. I almost tried to stop him, but my husband held me back. I'm at fault too for carelessly leaving my wallet around. Besides, repeatedly scolding him isn't going to help. But his attitude is far too unacceptable. This is too much. John has never been the kind of person to flaunt his role as the main breadwinner of the family. But it's a plain fact that it's thanks to him that we are able to maintain our lifestyle, and he provides for David and his wife as well. They're able to save on rent and living expenses as well, since they always come up with an excuse not to contribute to the household's expenses. So it's my husband who's been covering the majority of our expenses. And yet, instead of respecting John, David disparaged him. David's comments were unacceptable, but I was also enraged with his wife for introducing him to gambling. A few days later, still feeling uneasy, I decided to ask David's wife directly. "It seems like David is struggling with money lately. Do you know anything about it?" "Oh, he apparently took a big hit at the Kentucky Derby." "You knew about it?" "Yeah, after all, I was the one who suggested we go together," she admitted. Just as I thought, sure enough, David had been drawn back into horse racing by Sarah. "Why would you do such a thing?" "David was trying to quit horse racing," I interjected. "Is that so? I had no idea. Please, Sarah, I'm begging you not to invite David to the horse races anymore. If this keeps up, won't you be in trouble too?" "Well, we each have our own earnings and we're just doing what we like, so I have no problem with it," she replied nonchalantly. I was taken aback by her reply. Certainly, both David and Sarah, as a couple, were earning their own money and could spend it on whatever, as long as they had food, rent, and clothing covered. But you two are a married couple, right? You might even have kids in the future. For their sake as well, we've decided not to have children. We don't want to give up the things we love just to be tied down raising the kid, she revealed. I was shocked again by her response. There was too much information to process all at once, but in a way, it made sense. Having children would require them to have more savings by tens of thousands of dollars, which is probably why they could be so careless with money. But even without children, a married couple is still a married couple. But as a couple, you should support each other when in trouble, right? David is in trouble right now. Well, why don't you, Patricia, and the rest of the family help him out? You're his parents and well off, right? Oh, are you living off your pension now? But you had your retirement fund, didn't you? My husband worked for a foreign company, so we don't have a retirement fund. Really? That's a bummer, she remarked casually. I thought you had a nice retirement payout. We don't, so I need you and David as a couple to be more financially responsible. To be honest, the living expenses are already quite a burden, and we can't afford to cover for you guys anymore. Isn't that David's fault for losing? I can't take responsibility for that. But anyway, we can't right now. I was unable to secure a promise to support David and found myself ejected from David and Sarah's room. A week passed, and David's financial problems remained unsolved. Was he so desperate that he had to pilfer money from his parents' wallet? Shouldn't we help him before he resorts to illegal activity? I discussed it over and over with my husband John, but in the end, this was the result of us spoiling him in the past. John convinced me that we needed to be firm this time for his future's sake, and I had to agree. We were providing him breakfast and dinner, and he had a pass for commuting to work. The goal was simply to have him make it until his next paycheck, but then the situation took an unexpected turn. It happened on a weekend night as we finished our dinner and were relaxing in the living room as usual. Ding dong. Our doorbell rang, but we weren't expecting any visitors. So I approached the front door to see who was visiting us this late at night. I opened the door, wondering if I had a package scheduled for delivery, only to be taken aback. Standing there was Sarah, apparently unable to open the door as her hands were full with a cardboard box. What's going on? What's this box for? As I hurriedly took the box from her, a rustling sound echoed from within, causing me to let out a scream. In an instant, the box opened, and I found myself face to face with the animal inside. It was a cat. Isn't it cute? I found it abandoned on my way home, Sarah said with a proud grin. I was momentarily stunned, but I quickly remembered the gravity of the situation and yelled toward the living room, "John, go to her bedroom and shut the door immediately." I then closed the box and pushed it back towards Sarah. "I'm sorry, but we can't keep a cat in our house." "Ha, why is that?" Sarah looked confused. I explained to her that my husband, John, has a severe cat allergy. In addition to developing inflammation upon contact with cat saliva, he also suffers asthma-like symptoms when inhaling cat hair or dander. There was even a time in the past when he was rushed to the hospital because David had returned from a friend's house covered in fur. I thought I had already told Sarah about this when we started living together, but she seemed to have forgotten. "So, what are you saying? Do you want me to take it back where I found it? In this cold weather, it'll die." Sarah's statement left me at a loss for words. I couldn't possibly tell her to return it to the freezing cold outside. However, I can't expose my husband to danger either. "All right, you can keep it in your room for tonight, but just for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll contact an animal shelter and ask them to take it in." I thought that, at the very least, an animal shelter would provide temporary refuge for the cat. Sarah reluctantly nodded in agreement to my suggestion. I told my husband and son about it, and they agreed to let the cat stay in John and Sarah's room for the night. However, things didn't go as smoothly as expected the next morning. John and Sarah changed their minds and decided to keep the cat. "Sarah, that's not what we agreed on. But I really want to keep it. It's so cute." "Why can I keep it?" "Because your dad is allergic to cats. He'll be fine as long as he doesn't touch it." "We'll take good care of it, please. You won't be home during work, right?" "Who will take care of it then?" "I can't, which is why I'm telling you that we can't keep it." How terrible. I didn't know that even you can be so inconsiderate, unable to even save a small and cute kitten. Animal shelters, they end up euthanizing them, you know? Handing it over to such a place just because it's inconvenient for you, turning a blind eye to the sacrifice. Do you know what they call people like you? A boomer. Why? You're just a nuisance. If you can't live with this kitten, then please leave this house immediately, Sarah snapped. I was about to snap back at her, but David chimed in. "It's a good opportunity. Why don't you guys move into a retirement home? It might be comfortable. You're at that age and we're not taking care of you guys. You guys aren't even bringing in any income anymore. I've had enough." "Fine." Suddenly, my husband, who had been silently listening to our argument, interrupted me. Since last night's incident, he'd been wearing gloves and a mask and keeping a distance from David and his wife. I felt sorry for making him uncomfortable in his own home. "The reason we can't keep the cat is my fault. I will take your advice and leave," John said. As David said, this might be a good opportunity to consider moving into a retirement home. Saying that, John looked at me. Understanding his intentions, I remained silent. David and his wife probably took this as us giving up on our house. They suddenly became more cocky. "We'll take good care of this house, so don't worry. But keep the property under your name. but paperwork and payments are a pain. Moving into a retirement home can be quite expensive, you know. Please handle yourselves, don't rely on us. We aren't helping, they said, seeming relieved, even joyful, at our compliance. This must be their true nature. Perhaps they picked up that kitten on purpose, hoping for this to happen. I realized that we had been manipulated by Sarah. For the following week, I began packing while looking out for John. David and his wife, who had lost all reserve, continued to throw veiled insults at us. But they probably realized that if John collapsed, our move out would only get delayed. So they did not let the cat out of their room. That was the only promise they kept. Are you done packing yet? Please make it quick. We plan to remodel your rooms once you move out, Sarah said impatiently, not even offering to help us pack. It seemed they couldn't wait to make this house their own. They really don't know anything, do they? I glanced at my husband. He silently calmed me down and gave a gentle smile to Sarah. We're sorry for keeping you two waiting. We'll leave by tomorrow. The mover's coming in. It'd be best if you two stay in your rooms, he said. We were leaving the furniture and appliances that we shared with Sarah and David behind. Besides our stuff from the bedroom and wardrobe, we didn't have much left to pack. I bet it won't even take 30 minutes to move everything out. And came the next day. Our farewell was surprisingly dry. Well, we're off, I said. All right, take care, Sarah replied. No apologies, no words of gratitude. And they didn't see us off either. Sarah and David simply glanced at us from their leisure in the living room. Since they were so indifferent, we didn't need to make a fuss about leaving. But as we got in a cab, silently, I couldn't help but worry about our cat. We were leaving her with them. Could Sarah properly care for her? Would she raise her with affection? As our house receded from view through the cab's window, I dialed the number on my phone. In hindsight, it might have been my sixth sense that ticked off then. I did have some concerns about our life after moving out, but things became much easier for me. After all, we had two fewer people to worry about. Everything from meals to making choices, I only had to put in half the effort I used to. No need for considerations or worries. I felt like I had regained the freedom I had before David got married. About a week into this new daily routine, I received a call from Sarah one evening. After getting my husband's approval, I answered the call. Suddenly, a frantic voice echoed from the other end of the line. Patricia, what's going on? Power and gas have been cut off. It seemed that she had just gotten home. She was so flustered that the call had accidentally switched to video, but all that could be seen on the screen was the light from a flashlight moving around in a pitch-black room. I couldn't see her face. That's because we canceled the contract for our utility bills. Of course, they'd be off, I explained. What? What do you mean? Why did you cancel them? Are you trying to get us in trouble? Are you doing this because we kicked you out? Sarah's voice rose in panic. Sarah, calm down. Is David there? My husband's calm voice seemed to pacify her somewhat. He just got home, Sarah responded. David seemed to be having a mild panic attack at the sight of their pitch-black house. We waited for them to calm down before my husband explained the truth. We've actually sold the house. The new owner has been decided, and the handover date is coming up soon. That's why we canceled our utilities contract. Sold? We weren't told about this. Were you going through the process without telling us? We live here. I couldn't help but interrupt Sarah, hearing her entitled claim. I had to tell David about the contract and the handover date, even the progress. However, judging by Sarah's reaction, it was clear that David had not passed the message on to her. Rather, he may not even remember what he was told, given his habit of not listening. Over the past few months, the house had been in chaos due to meetings with real estate agents and potential buyers. David and Sarah, who were hardly home during the day, must have been oblivious to all this. There were plenty of chances for them to notice what was going on, but they missed them all. They simply never cared about what went on in the house, and that's on them. So, I assumed you guys would move out soon after we did. Have you not moved out yet? I decided to ask, feigning ignorance. Immediately, a quarrel erupted on the other end of the line. Accusations were thrown around. It's your fault. I didn't know we'd been fooled, and the image of David and Sarah arguing in the dark was both surreal and amusing. However, once their argument ended, David and Sarah turned their frustration back on us. Even so, isn't it overbearing to proceed with this without a consensus? I don't remember agreeing to this, Sarah complained. Well, I did get a reply when I asked if it was okay to sell the house. You said, yeah, sure, I responded. Technically, all I received was an absent-minded response from David, who was watching TV at the time. Still, he agreed to it. It's his fault for not listening and giving careless responses when I told him, I added. David was momentarily speechless, but then he seemed to have a change of heart and shouted loudly, enough. I get it. So what are we supposed to do? What do you mean? Where are we supposed to live? Where do we go now? You've prepared a place for us, right? David's yelling took my husband aback. Why? My husband asked back, puzzled. Our son was taken aback by this answer. You kicked us out. Why do we have to find you a new place? I interjected. But we really didn't kick you out. You were planning to leave anyway, right? So it's not our fault at all. Besides, it was your decision to sell the house. It's your responsibility to secure housing for us since we are affected by this, I argued. Yeah, that's right. For a rental, you pay some amount for leaving, then you gotta pay us some money too. I know you made a lot from selling the house. Rental, huh? Before paying you any vacating fee, you should pay us the rent for the period you were living in that house, shouldn't you? Plus, we covered all your living expenses too. Let's have you pay all of that upfront, including rent and living expenses. It'll be about $7,000 for a year. You can pay it right now, can't you? David and his wife remained silent with a groan. Considering David's financial situation, we were well aware that they were tight on money. Realizing that we had the upper hand, David started apologizing to appease us. That's right, we should be the ones to pay first. But we don't have the money right now, so we can't. So, to make sure we can pay you back properly, why don't we live together again? He suggested. Yeah, that's right. Please tell us where you're moving to. We'll move in with you guys right away, Sarah chimed in. I sneered at them. No, we can't live with a cat. Wasn't that the reason you kicked us out? We'll get rid of the cat right away, they offered, their selfishness evident. Feeling deeply sorry for the cat at their excessively selfish words, I refused. No, we can't live with a cat. Wasn't that the reason you kicked us out? As expected for David and his wife, the cat was nothing more than a tool to kick us out of the house. As long as it benefits you, you're willing to put others' needs over your wants. Doesn't that make you a boomer? I retorted, throwing their own words back at them. Sarah started to cry, but we had no obligation to be swayed by their tears. Besides, the place we moved into is an apartment for the elderly, so young people like you can't live there. You're the ones who suggested it, remember? I reminded them. After talking over them, I hung up. All I could hear from the phone was David and Sarah crying. In the end, we never heard an apology from them. Soon after that, the young couple left the house. Apparently, they had no savings and they both declared bankruptcy. Now, they live in public housing. When we returned to the house once for cleaning before handing it over, we were able to hear about David and Sarah from our friendly neighbor's wife. According to her, they had quite a hard time packing in a house without electricity, and as expected, they left the cat behind when they moved. Fortunately, I had asked the neighbor's wife to take care of the cat in advance, and she agreed. I offered to help her find a new owner for the cat, but she grew attached and decided to keep it. What was surprising was that David and his wife didn't get divorced. Those two were probably meant for each other. They might be eyeing my husband's inheritance, but we picked a pretty nice apartment. By the time we pass away, there will be hardly anything left. Finally, we were able to start living our life together as a couple without any interruption. The senior housing where we moved in has excellent services, with a gym, karaoke, and a pool. We even get served freshly made meals 3 times a day. And above all, there are many couples our age in the building. We have made a lot of new friends here, and we plan to enjoy our retirement years together.